Hello Year 6 and welcome to RE Day. Today we are learning more about the religion of Judaism, and in this lesson we're going to be learning all about the amazing festival of Purim. So here are some pictures of Purim festival. You might be wondering, why are these people dressed up in all these funny clothes, wearing dress up? We've got children here wearing funny hats. We've got people dancing in the street. It looks like a real carnival atmosphere. And we also see this delicious looking food here. So we're going to be learning all about the reasons behind the traditions of Purim festival. Okay, what will you need in this lesson? You're going to be needing a pen, paper or a book, and a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, it's fine, as long as you have something to write with and something to write on. Let's first of all start with a quiz based on our previous learning. Please, can you write down your answer? I'm going to read out the question. Question number 1. The holy book for Jewish people is called the Torah. True or false? Pause this video now and write down your answer. Question 2. What is the name of the place where Jewish people go to worship? Choose one. Is it the temple, the church, the mosque, or the synagogue? What is the name of the place where Jewish people go to worship? Temple, church, mosque, or synagogue? Pause this video now and write down your answer. Question 3, delete as appropriate. The Sabbath is the Jewish people's holy day set aside for rest or celebrating. It begins at sunset on Thursday or Friday and finishes when the sun sets on Saturday. Pause this video now and choose the right word, choosing one from inside each bracket. Question 4, true or false? Jewish people don't eat pork or shellfish. Food must also be prepared in a certain way according to Jewish tradition and is called kosher. Is that true or false? Pause this video now. Question 5 is about what we learned last unit in Christianity. Christians believe that Moses or Jesus is the Son of God and that God sent Jesus to live on earth as a human being in order to save humanity from the consequences of good deeds or sins. The two things are opposites. So choose one option from inside each of the two brackets. Question 6, true or false? Christians believe that Jesus was crucified on Good Friday and resurrected from the dead on Easter Sunday and ascended to heaven. Please pause this video now and write down whether you think this is true or false. And question 7, true or false? This is back to Judaism, something you learned about last year, and Mr. Murphy told me that you actually ate some of this bread. Traditionally, Jewish families eat this bread, named challah, at Friday night dinners on the Sabbath, also known as Shabbat. True or false? Pause this video now and write down your answer. Okay, let's go through the answers. The holy book for Jewish people is called the Torah. This is true. Here is a picture of a Torah. It's kept in a scroll, so it's paper rolled up. It's called the Torah. Question 2, what is the name of the place where Jewish people go to worship? That is the synagogue. Here is a picture of one type of synagogue. There are many different types of synagogues, and within Judaism, there's many different types of Judaism. For example, there's Orthodox, Reform, Hasidic, and here is one type of synagogue. Question 3, the Sabbath is the Jewish people's holy day set aside for rest and worship. It begins at sunset on Friday and finishes when the sun sets on Saturday. Interesting to compare it. As we go and learn about the religion of Judaism, it's always interesting to compare it to other religions and look at the similarities and differences. For Christians, the day of rest is on a Sunday. True or false? Jewish people don't eat pork or shellfish. Food must also be prepared in a certain way according to Jewish tradition and is called kosher. That is true. In the same way in which in Islam, one is not supposed to eat pork, and in Hinduism, one is not supposed to eat cow meat. Okay, delete as appropriate. Christians believe that Jesus is the Son of God and that God sent Jesus to live on earth as a human being in order to save humanity from the consequences of its sins. So sins are the opposite of good deeds. And it is true, Christians believe that Jesus was crucified on Good Friday and resurrected from the dead on Easter Sunday and ascended, meaning rose to heaven. And it's true, traditionally, Jewish families eat this bread named challah at Friday night dinners on the Sabbath, also known as Shabbat. Now, Mr. Murphy told me that when you tried this bread last year, the crumbs went everywhere. Okay, now let's turn to today's new learning. What is Purim? What is this festival called Purim? Purim is one of the most entertaining Jewish holidays. Well, we saw that in the pictures earlier, people dressed up in carnival and fancy dress outfits. Now, what does Purim commemorate? It commemorates the time when the Jewish people living in Persia was saved from extermination by the courage of a young Jewish woman called Esther. Here we have a painting of Esther. And you might be wondering, what or where is Persia? Well, Persia is what today is the country of Iran. We have two maps here. In this map, we see the Persian Empire around 486 BC. So BC, what does that stand for? What does it mean? Think about it for a moment. It stands for before Christ. So before the year zero, 486 years before Christ was born, which was in the year zero. This was what the Persian Empire looked like. It took up a lot of what today is the Middle East. We have Israel here, Egypt, Palestine, India on this side. And today we have the country of Iran, which is what the most of Persia took up. So this is a map from today, Iran in the Middle East, with all of these surrounding countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Turkey, all surrounding Iran. Okay, so you might be wondering, what did this courageous young woman called Esther do that was so special that there is now a festival that all the Jewish people celebrate? So before we read about the story of Esther, let's refresh some of our previously learnt vocabulary. Well, a synagogue is the place of worship for Jewish people. Jewish people go to the synagogue to worship in the same way in which Christians go to church, Muslims go to the mosque, and Buddhists go to the temple to worship. Jewish people go to the synagogue. Rabbi. So the rabbi is the head of the synagogue. It's the equivalent in Christianity might be a priest who is the head of the church. Hebrew. Hebrew is the language that is spoken today in Israel, and it is also the language in which the Torah is written. The Sabbath, as we know, is for Jewish people is the holy day of rest, and it starts when the sun sets on Friday night and ends on the Saturday when the sun sets. It's a time for rest and worship, not for celebration. Okay, let's learn some new vocabulary. A mitzvah is a commandment from the Torah, so it's telling the Jewish people what to do is a mitzvah. You might have heard the term bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. It's the same word. It's a commandment of what to do. Megillah. Megillah is the story of the book of Esther, which we are about to read, and it is contained in a scroll. A nobleman is someone who is descended from royalty. So we're going to be learning about a nobleman in the story of Esther. Commanded. If someone was commanded to do something. They're told to do something. So Jewish people are given various commandments, mitzvahs, from the Torah. Sorry, that should say summoned with an S. So if you are summoned to come somewhere, you are told to come somewhere. So as we're going to read about in the story of Esther, various people are summoned by the king. Okay, so we're going to read about the story of Purim in the book of Esther. Now, this scroll here is what the book of Esther is traditionally contained in, and the book of Esther is known as the Megillah, which means scroll. And in the book of Esther, we are going to be encountering various characters. King Xerxes, Vashti, his wife, Queen Esther, who this whole story is about, who's a brave young Jewish woman, Mordecai, who's her cousin, much older cousin, kind of like a father figure, and Haman, the baddie, the villain. Haman is the villain of the story. So these children here during Purim dress up as the characters from this story, and we are going to read the story now. Okay, here we go. The story of Purim. Now, I have added some pictures here and written the names of the characters so you can visualize what these people would have looked like. And I've also put in bold words that you might not know. And as we go along, I'm going to explain them. I would like you to pay close attention to the characters in this story and the plot, because we're going to be doing an activity where you will have to sort the various things that happen in this story into the correct order. So, the story of Purim is told in the book of Esther. Esther is a Jewish girl who becomes queen to King Xerxes of Persia, and through her bravery is able to thwart an attempt to slaughter all the Jews living in Persia at that time. Purim commemorates Esther's courage in saving the Jewish people living in Persia 2,000 years ago from extermination. So when you thwart an attempt, it's you stop an attempt. Heroes and villains. The heroes are Esther and her cousin Mordecai. Here we see a picture of them. Esther has no mother or father, and Mordecai had brought her up as if she was his daughter. The villain in the story is Haman, the favorite nobleman of Xerxes, king of Persia. King Xerxes can also be seen as a villain because of the way he treats women and because of his willingness to have all the Jews killed for no good reason. So, Xerxes here is the king of Persia. Xerxes' wife, Queen Vashti, had been banished because she wouldn't display herself to the diners at an all-male banquet he was giving. King Xerxes summoned, there's the word we learned earlier, summoned women from all over the land in order to find a new queen. And after seeing many women, he chose Esther. So King Xerxes chose Esther to be his new queen. The king chose her without knowing that Esther was Jewish because Mordecai had told her not to tell him. Haman was furious with Mordecai because Mordecai refused to bow down before him to show his respect. In order to punish Mordecai, Haman decided to exterminate the whole Jewish people. So Haman went to the king and told him that he ought to get rid of the Jews. Haman told the king that he would pay for the extermination. The king gave Haman his signet ring, so Haman could give orders in the king's name and told him to get on with it. Here's a picture of a signet ring, and here is a picture of Haman giving of King Xerxes giving Haman his signet ring. Mordecai persuaded Esther to beg the king for mercy for the Jews. In fact, Mordecai didn't actually persuade Esther, he tried to frighten her into doing it. And he pointed out that the reason she had become queen was so that she could rescue the Jews. And going to see the king was risky for Esther, because if you approached the king without being invited, you could be executed, you could be killed. And the king hadn't sent for Esther in a month. Esther fasted for 3 days to prepare herself, as did all the Jews in her town, and then went to see the king. And here we see a picture of her looking very scared and hungry because she's fasted for 3 days. Fortunately, he was pleased to see her, and she wasn't executed. He welcomed her, and she eventually told him of Haman's plan to exterminate the Jews. She begged the king to show mercy to the Jewish people, and the appalled king granted it at once, and the Jewish people were saved. So appalled means horrified. The king had a problem, since it was not within his power to rescind, so to take back the orders that Haman had given in his name. Because remember, King Xerxes gave Haman his signet ring, which meant that Haman could execute orders. So Xerxes issued another decree, another law, which allowed the Jews to defend themselves against those who tried to kill them. As a result, the Jews killed over 70,000 of their enemies. The villain Haman was hanged in the gallows, and he had built to execute Mordecai, and Mordecai was given Haman's job in his place. So there we have the story of Esther. Now, the first activity I would like you to do is please put these in the correct order. We have 8 pieces of the story that are currently not in the correct order, and what you need to do is put them in the correct order. Now, rather than writing them all out, you can draw this table listing the numbers 1 to 8, and you can then write the letter in the correct order. I have done the first 2 for you, but I would like you to please complete this table. You can refer back to the story that we've just read. You might want to read the whole thing again to refresh your memory, and you will find the PDF in the link of the daily upload sheet. Please pause this video now and draw this table and complete the table. Okay, now let's go through the answers. The first thing that happened was King Xerxes summoned women from all over the land in order to find a new queen. Remember, he wanted to find a new queen because he didn't want to be married to Queen Vashti anymore. After seeing many women, he chose Esther. The second thing that happened was the king chose Esther without knowing that she was Jewish, because Mordecai had told her not to tell him. The next thing that happens is H. Haman was furious with Mordecai because Mordecai refused to bow down before him to show him respect. The fourth thing that happened was C. In order to punish Mordecai, Haman decided to exterminate the whole Jewish people. The fifth thing that happened in the story of Esther was E. The king gave Haman his signet ring and told him to get on with it. Then G. Mordecai persuaded Esther to beg the king for mercy for the Jews. And D. Esther fasted for 3 days to prepare herself, as did all the Jews in her town, and then went to see King Xerxes. And finally, F. She begged the king to show mercy to the Jewish people, and the appalled, horrified king granted it at once, and the Jewish people were saved. So this is the story of Esther, and this is why Jewish people commemorate Esther for her bravery. Okay, now let's look at what the main Purim traditions are. We have a few clues here. We see people dressed up, we see a carnival, we see this noisemaker, and we see these delicious looking biscuits. So, carnival time. It's customary to hold carnival-like celebrations on Purim to perform plays and parodies. And you guessed it, One of the plays that they perform is the story of Esther that we just learned about. Now, reading the book of Esther, the main commandment related to Purim is to hear the reading of the book of Esther. The book of Esther is known as the Megillah, which means scroll. And here we see a paper scroll. And you can see here, have a peek at some written Hebrew. This is Hebrew script, which you don't read from left to right like English. You read from right to left. Synagogue celebrations. At Purim, Jews read the story of Esther in the synagogue. It's usually an entertaining and rowdy occasion. The synagogue is crowded with men, women, and children. Some wear their best Sabbath clothes, but many dress up in colorful costumes and masks. So, year 6, I have 2 questions for you. Question number 1, what differences do you notice between what is going on in these 2 synagogue services? Compare left with right. Well, you'll probably notice that there is a lot of more celebration going on in the synagogue service. On the left, there's balloons, there's children dancing and singing and dressed up. This synagogue service looks a lot more serious. So, question 2 is, which synagogue do you think is during Purim? Yes, you guessed it. The synagogue service on the left is during Purim because there are celebrations going on. Making a noise. The Purim story features a villain called Haman, who we read about in the story just now. He is the bad guy because he wanted to exterminate, to kill all of the Jews. He's the one who King Xerxes gave his signet ring to, so that Haman could execute orders on his behalf. The Purim story features this villain Haman, and everyone in the synagogue boos, hisses, and stamps their feet and uses noisemakers and cymbals whenever the name of Haman is mentioned during the service. Here we see noisemakers that when you twirl them around, they make a loud noise. Dressing up. Children in particular enjoy dressing up as the characters found in the book of Esther, including King Xerxes, Vashti, Queen Esther, Mordecai, and Haman. So, I have talked about a few Purim traditions so far, and I want you to be paying close attention because at the end of this, we are going to do an activity where you will need to list out and write out all of the Purim traditions. So as a refresher, we have looked at dressing up, making a noise, synagogue celebrations, reading the book, and carnival time. Let's see what other Purim traditions there are. There is eating and drinking. It's a mitzvah, so it's a commandment that Jewish people should eat, drink, and be merry at Purim. So Jewish people are commanded by the Torah to have a good time during Purim. The word mitzvah is Hebrew, and it refers to a commandment commanded by God to be performed as a religious duty. How many commandments? How many mitzvahs are there? There are 613. So, as I said, it's always important to link what we're learning about one religion to what we learn about other religions. Which other religions celebrate festivals with food and drink? Pause this video now and have a think about it. Well, I can think of one that happened in December in Christianity. At Christmas, Christians celebrate with food and drink. And another festival in Islam that is celebrated with food is Eid, is with the breaking of the Ramadan fast is celebrated with food. Okay, turning back to Purim in Judaism, gifts and charity. Jews are commanded to send gifts of money and food or drink and make donations to charity as part of Purim. I'm told by my Jewish friends that this is a very important part of Purim, is donating money to charity. What other religions that you've studied so far also place value on donating money to charity? So in Islam, zakat is the compulsory giving of a set proportion of one's wealth to charity. And zakat is the third pillar of Islam. Interesting to compare different religions and look at the differences and similarities. Turning back to Judaism and Purim. Purim baskets in Israel. Purim baskets containing an assortment of sweets, cookies and bagels, wine, nuts and fruit are sold. They are given to friends, family and to charity because, as we know, charity is an important part of Purim. And what do we see here in this Purim basket? We keep seeing these triangular biscuits. These are Haman's pockets. Who is Haman? Well, he's the villain we learned about in the story of Esther. A common treat at this time of the year are Haman's pockets, sometimes called Haman Tashen. These triangular fruit-filled cookies represent Haman's three-cornered hat. And here we see Haman with his hat that has three corners and these delicious looking Haman's pockets. Here we see them assorted into the shape of the Star of David, which is the symbol of Judaism. And pastries in the shape of different animals and heroes of the Megillah, so the scroll, and kreplach, which is meat wrapped in a dough and folded into a triangle, are also popular. These look absolutely delicious. I wouldn't mind having some of these right now. Okay, now turning to our next activity. In your book or on a piece of paper, please write numbers 1 to 7 and a sentence explaining what happens at the respective Purim tradition. Some sentences have been started for you, and the first one has been connected for you. So let me model this and how I would like it to be done in your books. So here, first of all, I would like you to write the title. What are the main Purim traditions? Then, once you've underlined it using a ruler, I would like you to start with number 1, writing number 1. We look at number 1, the picture. What's that a picture of? I can see a jar with money that says charity on it. Then I would go down here until I find the heading that I think links up with that one, gifts and charity. So then I would write the title, gifts and charity, underline the subtitle using a ruler, and I would write a sentence about gifts and charity based on what we have previously learned. If you need to refresh your memory, you can rewind this video and look at what I'm writing here. So, Jews are commanded to send gifts, money, food or drink, and make donations to charity. Then I would go to number 2 and look at the picture. What are these triangular shaped pastries? Let's go down this list. They are, of course, Haman's pockets. Haman, the bad guy from the story of Esther. So I have done a sentence starter there for you. And I would write, these triangular fruit-filled cookies represent Haman's three-cornered hat. Okay, then I would write down number 3 and go to picture number 3. What's happening here? These look like children dressed up. So I would go down here, dressing up. Then I would write a sentence explaining this Purim tradition. So, dressing up, underlining it using a ruler. Children, in particular, enjoy dressing up as the characters from the book of Esther. Okay, so once I've finished writing that, I would go on to number 4. What's happening in this picture? It looks like a family eating food with friends. So what I would do is go down this list and find the appropriate title, eating and drinking with friends and family. And then I would write a sentence explaining this Purim tradition. I would like you to please complete all 7, as I have modeled here, for all 7 of these Purim traditions. If you have gotten to the end and have time, you can also complete this extension. Which of these traditions do you think is the most important and why? There's no correct answer, but you can give your opinion. Okay, let's go through the answers. We got up to number 4, which was eating and drinking with friends and family. It's a mitzvah, so a commandment, that Jewish people should eat, drink, and be merry at Purim. Number 5, what's this a picture of? It's a picture of a noisemaker. The Purim story features a villain called Haman, and everyone in the synagogue boos and uses noisemakers and cymbals whenever the name of Haman is mentioned during the service. Okay, number 6. 6 is a scroll, the Book of Esther. At Purim, it is traditional to read the Book of Esther. The Book of Esther is known as the Megillah, which means scroll. And finally, number 7, carnival time. It is customary to hold carnival-like celebrations on Purim. Okay, I'm really looking forward to seeing your answers uploaded onto Seesaw, and hopefully you can give the extension a go too. Okay, now, which part of Purim do you think looks the most fun? Is it the dressing up? Is it the eating of the Haman's pockets? Is it the eating and drinking with friends and family? Or is it making a noise? It's totally up to you. You can tell me on Seesaw. So Year 6, I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson on the Festival of Purim, which I believe is coming up or has happened around the time of today's lesson. So have a great day.